So I'm standing in front of our Snapdragon trial. This is our overwintered tunnel. And the Snapdragons that you see here were all started seeded at the end of August and transplanted into this tunnel in the middle of October. They overwintered in this tunnel and are now, we're just harvesting our first flush of blooms off of these. And it's really great timing for a first harvest of some really high quality Snapdragons because we just transplanted our field Snapdragons about a week and a half ago. And so while we're waiting for those field snaps to mature and bloom, we have a really beautiful crop of tunnel grown Snapdragons that we're able to harvest and move out of here. So it's a really well-timed crop. I think that from the overwinter trials that we've done over the past several years, the Snapdragons have consistently performed really well. They have a pretty much 100% survival rate in the tunnel during our Zone 5 main winters, and they produce consistently and really well early in the spring. As you can see, really tall, vigorous plants and really high quality stems. So we've trialed several different series and individual varieties in the tunnel, and I'm going to just talk about a few of those here. The variety that you can see right here, this is Costa Silver. The Costa series is a Group 2 series, and so they're really well suited for overwintering, and they have given us our first blooms out of the tunnel. You can see if you're looking for a series or variety to start with in an overwintered tunnel, the Costa will probably give you some of your earliest blooms. And then Costa Silver is a really beautiful, delicate, pale pink variety. We've already been harvesting off of this for a little over a week now. So you can see really strong, sturdy stems, and this is kind of the last of the first flush, but we're also anticipating a second flush of blooms off of all of the Snapdragons in here as well. So we'll get a second harvest off of these in a few more weeks. Another Costa variety that is really beautiful is Costa Apricot. It's a little bit shorter than the Costa Silver, but again, another early blooming Group 2 Snapdragon. You can see has a really tight, compact flower spike and a really tall, sturdy stem. And again, we'll get another nice second flush off of these. Also really beautiful colors in here with the peach and the bronze and the gold. This is a gorgeous early spring flower. So moving on to some of the other varieties that we've trialed in our tunnel. This is the Rocket series. This is Rocket Mix. And you can see there's, it overwinters really well. It survives the winter, starts blooming nicely, but it's, of the varieties and series that we've trialed in the tunnel, this is probably not one that we would recommend, just because you can see in this plot there's a little bit of variability in terms of the timing of the colors as they bloom. And then another thing that we've noticed with the Rockets is the internodes on the stem between the florets tend to be pretty long. Again, compare that to something like the Costa Apricot that has a really dense, compact flower spike. And so that's one of the reasons that the Rockets seem like a slightly lower quality bloom under the tunnel conditions. We recommend those for the field, but again, in the tunnel they tend to lengthen a little bit and there's some variability. This is the Potomac mix that I'm standing in front of right now. It's just coming into bloom, so it's a little bit later than the Costa series, but again, this is another variety that we do recommend for the tunnel. They overwinter really well, and even they're just a little bit later than the Costas, but they still have really uniform stems across the mix and the individual varieties. They have really uniform stem thickness and sturdy stems in a really nice range of colors. So right now I'm standing in front of our Costa mix. Again, the Costa series is a Group 2, so they do really well overwintering, and they're one of the earliest to bloom in our tunnel trials. You can see a nice range of colors here. We've already been harvesting off of this plot for about a week. This is May 29th, so around the third week of May we were able to start cutting off of these. We'll get a first cut, and then are anticipating another flush of blooms off of these stems. And again, really nice, sturdy, tall stems, good quality, especially for this time of the year. I'm standing in front of our planting of Madam Butterfly snapdragons. Madam Butterfly is an older variety. It's not as recent as some series like the Potomac or the Costa series, and even though it is an older variety and it isn't assigned a group number like some of the newer Snapdragon material, it does really well both in the overwintered tunnel and in the field plantings. And you can see one of the things that's really wonderful about this variety are the really ruffled double blooms in a really nice range of colors too. This plot is just starting to bloom, so you'll see more colors as the plot develops, but this one we've been really impressed with both in the tunnel and in the field. So this Snapdragon trial was planted into the tunnel in mid-October, and we pinched the plants when they went in the ground. But then over the course of the winter, the effect of the cold temperatures actually sort of has a natural pinching effect, or it encourages dense branching on the plants as they grow through the winter and then start growing again during the spring. And so in general, on these plants, we're seeing between 6 to 12 stems per plant. And that'll be our first cut, but they also will have a really nice second flush of blooms as well. So I'm here in our overwintered tunnel in Albion, Maine in Zone 5, and I wanted to take just a minute and talk about one of my top 5 favorite crops for an overwintered hoop house. So if you're thinking of experimenting with trialing flowers in an overwintered tunnel, I would definitely recommend starting with Snapdragons. We've had really good success with these in our trials over the past several years, and regardless of the series that we've used or the variety, we've typically had 100% survival rate, and then also really vigorous, good early growth and high quality stems. So the 2 varieties that I have right here are from the Costa series. The Costas are a group 2 series, so they're well suited for overwinter and early spring production. They're the first series to bloom in our tunnel trials typically, and you can see on both of these, here's Costa Silver. You can see the long bloom spikes and the really sturdy stems, and similarly with the Costa Apricot, just beautiful glowing blooms, and again, really strong, sturdy, high quality stems, which is great to be able to have access to in the early spring, in May and into June, when a lot of the field flowers here aren't blooming yet. So with the Snapdragons, one of the other things that we have found in our overwintered trials is that we've had good luck with different groups and different series, and so we've actually found it seems to be beneficial to plant a few different series in a tunnel. So we've used group 1 and group 2 Snapdragons like the Costas that will bloom earlier, and then we've also at the same time planted varieties from group 3 or group 4 like the Potomac series, and even varieties like the Madam Butterfly that don't really have an assigned series. And we've had good luck with all of those in our tunnel, and would actually recommend all of those varieties, whereas we may not recommend all of those for like a summer field planting. In that sort of situation, it's probably best to stick with a group 3 or group 4. But all groups have bloomed well in our tunnel trials, and have also, what that does for us too is giving us a nice succession of blooms within our tunnels too. So we're harvesting first from the Costas and then following that with the Potomacs and the Madam Butterflies, and it kind of extends our season within the tunnel as well. So I'm standing in front of our overwintered Snapdragon planting. These Snapdragons were seeded in late August and transplanted into our tunnel in the middle of October. They've overwintered really well, and we've gotten several cuts off of these already. As we've trialed Snapdragons over the past several years in our tunnels, we've found that we also have good success with an early spring planting of Snapdragons. So we've found it possible to seed in early January and then transplant into the tunnel in early spring, and you can still get a really good, high quality spring crop. So depending on your production system, that may work for you. One of the things that we have found that we prefer with the Snapdragons, at least for us, is starting those seedlings in the late summer and transplanting in the early fall. That way we're able to take advantage of the heat and the light during the summer and the early fall. Starting seedlings in January can be a little trickier because typically you need additional heat, additional light, and it can be challenging to get those going in the depths of winter, at least here in Zone 5. And so again, it depends on your production system, what works best for you. One of the other benefits of starting these seedlings in the summer and transplanting into the tunnel in the fall is that if you do have the benefit of being able to get away from your farm for a little bit during the winter season, a fall transplanting might allow that a little better. The Snapdragons are just sitting under row cover in the tunnel during the winter, and you don't have to worry about starting seeds in January. So I'm standing here in front of our Snapdragon planting. It's June 26th, and this is the second flush off of our Costa Silver Snapdragons. We harvested the first flush. These were some of the earliest Snapdragons to bloom in our tunnel, and we harvested a couple weeks ago, finished harvesting the last of the first flush, and now we have this really nice second round of blooms that we'll be able to harvest, and these are going to go really nicely with all of the later blooming crops that we have in our tunnel. So the Scabiosa, the Rudbeckia, the Carnations, the Dara. So it's really, really well timed here. And then another thing that's really nice about having another round of Snapdragons to harvest is that these are, for us at least, are blooming about a week before we'll be starting to pull our first Snapdragons out of our field plantings. So again, this is the last week in June, probably first week in July, we'll start harvesting the first snaps out of our field. So it's a really, having Snapdragons in the tunnel is a great way to extend your Snapdragon season, and it's worked really well for us. You can see the stems aren't quite as thick as our first cut, but you can see they're still nice and long and still sturdy too. So this is a really, really nice quality stem to be pulling out of here in the end of June.